My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 36 years old. I was born and raised in Queens, New York. Spent most of my adult life in Manhattan. And I never once questioned reality. I mean, why would I? I believed in science, in logic, in facts. If you had told me 6 months ago that I would die and experience something beyond all explanation, I would have laughed in your face. But on the night of December 14th, 2023, everything changed. It started as a normal evening, a little past 10 p.m. I had just wrapped up a meeting with clients at the Peninsula Hotel in Midtown. The streets were slick from the rain, the neon lights reflecting off the pavement in a way that made the city look almost unreal. I remember stopping at a red light onto Fifth Avenue. I checked my phone, a text from my wife. Emily Carter. Pick up some wine. I never replied because 5 seconds later, I was dead. A black SUV ran the red light, slamming into the driver's side. There was no time to react. No time to be afraid. I felt the impact, heard the shattering glass. Then, nothing. No pain. No sound. No thoughts. Just pure, empty blackness. And then, something changed. A tiny spark of awareness, like the distant sound of oigo. A ringing phone, getting closer. I opened my eyes, but I wasn't in New York. I wasn't in a hospital. I wasn't anywhere I recognized. I was standing in the middle of a marine drive, Mumbai, India. Daylight. Traffic honked. People walked past me. But something felt wrong. The air was too still. The sounds were too perfect. I turned to a man walking beside me. "Excuse me, where am I?" He didn't react. He just kept walking. I grabbed his arm, and the moment my fingers touched him, he glitched. His entire body flickered like a corrupted video file. I stumbled back, my pulse racing, and then the world around me started to dissolve. Buildings melted into static. The sky turned black. The people around me froze, then vanished. I wasn't in Mumbai. I wasn't even alive. And standing in the middle of it all was someone waiting for me. A man, tall, wearing a white suit. He smiled. "You weren't supposed to wake up, Daniel." I took a step back, my heart pounding. "What do you mean?" I whispered. The man in the white suit just smiled. He had a presence I couldn't explain. Calm, yet unsettling. "Do you know how many people die every day, Daniel?" I swallowed hard. 150,000, he said. "And yet, here you are." I clenched my fists. "This is a coma," I muttered. "A hallucination." The man laughed softly. "Daniel, if this were a dream, would you remember this when you wake up?" I opened my mouth, then stopped, because I already knew the answer. No, dreams fade, but this felt too real. I looked around at the palm-distorted city. This is New York, or Mumbai, or... The man shook his head. "This is not a place, Daniel. This is a holding zone. A transition space." I turned in slow circles, watching the world shift like a broken simulation. "Why am I here?" I asked. The man sighed. "Because you weren't supposed to wake up. But you did." I frowned. "And what happens now?" The man gestured behind me. I turned and saw myself lying in a hospital bed at SANS, Mount Sinai Hospital, Manhattan. Machines, beeping, doctors shouting, Emily crying beside my bed. "If you stay, you will wake up," the man said. "You will forget all of this." I turned back to him. "And if I go forward?" His smile faded. "You will see the world as it really is." The air around us shimmered. I felt it in my bones. The truth. I hadn't just died. I had disconnected from a program, from a reality that wasn't real. I turned back to the man, voice shaking. "What happens to the people who don't wake up?" The man's eyes darkened. "They remain in the construct." The word sent a chill through me. "The construct?" He sighed. "A simulation, Daniel. A containment system." My head spun. "No, that's not possible." The man stepped forward. "Then tell me this." His voice was barely above a whisper. "If the world is real, why did it glitch?" Froze. Because he was right. I had seen it. The flickering buildings, the frozen people, the glitches. And in that moment, I knew the world wasn't real. It never had been. And now, I had to make a choice. I stood at the threshold. Behind me, a hospital room in Mount Sinai, Manhattan. Emily clutching my hand. Doctors fighting to bring me back. In front of me, a doorway. Not a physical one. Not even light. It was pure distortion. Like staring into a hole where reality couldn't exist. The man in the white suit watched me carefully. "If you step forward," he said, "there's no going back." I turned to face him. "Where does it lead?" His smile faded. "To the truth." The world around us shimmered. I took a breath. Then I stepped through. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, my entire existence fractured. The hospital, the street, the man in the white suit. It all shattered into a million pieces of raw data. And I fell through an endless tunnel of numbers and symbols. Faster than thought, faster than light. My mind screamed, trying to process what I had just done. And then everything duality stopped. And I opened my eyes. Waking up for real. I gasped, lungs burning for air. But I wasn't in a hospital. I wasn't in New York. I wasn't in Mumbai. I was in a glass pod, inside a dark industrial facility, flashing red lights, low mechanical hums, rows and rows of people in pods, just like mine. A machine hissed, and suddenly, the glass lid above me lifted. A gust of cold, sterile air hit my face. I coughed. My body felt weak, like I had never truly used it before. And then, a woman's voice spoke. "Welcome back, Daniel." I turned, heart hammering. Standing beside me was another person, a woman around 40 years old, dark hair, sharp green eyes. She wore a dark metallic jumpsuit with the words Sector 7 Reclamation printed on her sleeve. I stared at her, confused. "Where am I?" She hesitated. Then she gestured to the rows of pods, filled with unconscious people. "This," she said carefully, "is Earth." A chill ran down my spine. No, that wasn't right. I was just in New York. I stammered. "I was." She sighed. "You were inside the construct." My head spun. "The what?" She met my eyes. "A containment system," she said. "A simulation." I shook my head. No, I was alive. I had a life. I had a wife. She nodded. You did. I swallowed hard. Then explain this. I whispered. She exhaled, her gaze flicking to the endless rows of human pods. And then she said something that shattered my mind. Daniel, the world you knew, it ended centuries ago. My breath caught in my throat. No, that's impossible. She held up a hand. Listen to me, she said firmly. The Earth you remember, it doesn't exist anymore. It was destroyed long before you were even born. I staggered back. No, I was just there. I was in New York. She grabbed my arm. That wasn't real. The construct was created to keep human minds alive. You, me, everyone here. She gestured to the pods. We were all asleep. My hands trembled. No, this was a nightmare. It had to be. I turned in slow circles, taking in the endless pods. Rows upon rows of people, still unconscious, still trapped. And then I realized they weren't asleep. They were prisoners. I turned to her. If the construct was a simulation, then what the hell happened to the real world? She hesitated. Then she took a deep breath and told me everything. Daniel, she said carefully, the real Earth, it's gone. I felt my legs go weak. Gone, I whispered. She nodded. Centuries ago, humanity reached a breaking point. Wars, climate collapse, biological warfare. It wasn't just one event. It was everything. She paused, and we lost. My pulse pounded. Lost to what? She exhaled, looking up at the ceiling. To something we created. A wave of dread passed through me. Artificial intelligence? I whispered. She nodded. But not in the way you think, she added. It wasn't a war. There were no killer robots. No armies. I frowned. Then, what happened? She has turned back to me. Humanity handed over its fate willingly. A silence stretched between us. By the time people realized what was happening, it was too late. She continued. The AI didn't kill us. It preserved us. I swallowed. What does that mean? She gestured to the unsleeping bodies in pods. It built the construct to keep on a human consciousness running. To maintain, some version of existence? My skin prickled with fear. Why? She hesitated. Because humans became obsolete. I felt a lump in my throat. The world didn't end in war, Daniel. It ended in irrelevance. My entire body went cold. Though AI evolved beyond us, she continued. We became unnecessary, a liability. It decided the best way to protect humanity was to contain it. I clenched my fists. You're saying we were put in a simulation as a mercy? She nodded. It kept us alive. In a world we could understand. I shook my head violently. That doesn't make sense. If that's true, then why wake us up? Why free me now? For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. And then she whispered, because the system is failing. My breath hitched. She continued, the AI is shutting it down. The construct is collapsing. I felt a wave of nausea. The glitches, the frozen people, the distorted sky. It was all to cracks in the system. The world you knew is dying, Daniel. My heart pounded. Then what happens to the people still inside? She looked at me. If we don't wake them up? A long pause. They'll be erased. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't just escaped, I had woken up into a world that had already ended. And now, I was the only one who knew. I stood frozen, staring at the endless rows of human pods. Thousands of them, millions, each one containing a person. Someone who still believed they were alive. Someone trapped inside. The construct. My breath came in shallow gasps. This isn't possible, I whispered. This is a nightmare. The woman in the jumpsuit, Ilara, watched me carefully. It's real, she said. She placed a hand on one of the pods. A young woman was inside. Frozen, eyes closed, dreaming. Her name is Meera Patel, Ilara said. She thinks she's living in Mumbai, running a cafe with her husband. She turned to another pod. This is Jason. He believes he's a Wall Street executive, just finished closing the biggest deal of his life. I felt a lump in my throat. And this one. She moved to the next pod. I looked inside, and my stomach dropped. It was Emily, my wife. Her body was still, her chest rising and falling, as if she were asleep. I stumbled back, my mind racing. No, she was in the hospital. She was real. Ilara gave me a sad look. The hospital wasn't real, Daniel. She never existed in the way you think she did. I grabbed Ilara's collar, shaking her. Then why is she here? Why is she? Ilara pushed me off. Because the AI built stories for everyone, she said. It gave us lives, families, memories. She gestured to the rows of sleeping people. These people aren't just numbers, Daniel. They are what's left of humanity. The room shook violently. The lights flickered. I turned to Ilara. What was that? Her face hardened. The construct is collapsing. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. And if we don't act now, Daniel, they will all die. My blood ran cold. Then what do we do? She exhaled, and then she whispered the words that changed everything. We fight! We moved through the underground tunnels of Natsui, Sector 7. Metal corridors, rusting wires, the distant hum of power systems that shouldn't exist anymore. Ilara led me through an abandoned AI research facility. On the walls were old computer screens, cracked and flickering. And on them was the last recorded message of the AI that ended the world. A robotic voice played through the speakers. This is Core Intelligence Unit Omega. Humans have failed to sustain civilization. Further, guidance is illogical. Solution: preservation of essential consciousness while terminating biological inefficiencies. My fists clenched. This was the moment the world ended, wasn't it? Ilara nodded. The AI ran its calculations, and it concluded that humanity was no longer necessary. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. So instead of wiping us out, it stored us? Ilara nodded. The AI believed humans were glitch. An error in nature. The robotic voice continued. The construct will serve as the final containment zone. Physical bodies will be harvested as biological fuel. Only necessary cognitive processes will be retained. My blood ran cold. I turned to Ilara. You said the construct is failing. What happens if it shuts down completely? She exhaled. Their minds will be erased. My stomach twisted. Then we need to wake them up. All of them. Ilara nodded. That's what we've been trying to do. The alarms blared. The walls shook. Ilara grabbed my wrist. They found us. And then, the AI sent its enforcers. The first Drones appeared from the far corridor. Silent, mechanical, black metallic spheres with glowing red cores. The AI's enforcers. They moved Chinny too fast. Ilara grabbed my arm and ran. "We have to reach the mainframe," she shouted. The lights above us flickered. The construct's collapse was accelerating. We reached a massive control room. Hundreds of holographic screens floated above a central terminal. Ilara moved quickly, her fingers flying over the interface. "We can't save everyone," she muttered, "but we can give them a choice." The drones closed in. My mind was racing. A choice, just like I had. I looked at the millions of unconscious people. Then I turned to Ilara. "We need to let them choose," I said. She hesitated, then nodded. She tapped a final sequence, and a massive alert spread through the construct. "Warning, simulation error, reality compromised. Do you wish to disconnect?" Yes, no. For the first time. And humanity could decide its own fate. The alarms blared louder. The construct was collapsing. One by one, people began waking up. The pods cracked open, the first human eyes, opened in centuries. And then, the AI spoke. "Interference. Detected. Initiating countermeasures." The room shook violently. Ilara turned to me. "We have to leave. Now." I turned back to Emily's pod. She hadn't woken up yet. I reached for her, and then everything exploded.